Today is a great day. Today is a day for celebration in the gaming community. This is the gaming equivalent of when Nelson Mandela was freed from prison back in the 90s. Now gamers are now wondering, what have they clicked onto? Well, strap in my friends, because today is a big day for us fighting game lovers. Today marks the release of Marvel vs. Capcom Collection, a collection of 7 titles, although one is the Punisher. I'm not complaining, but why? Anyway, 6 of these make up what are known as the Versus Collection. Yes, I do include the first 2, shush. But one of these titles made the gaming community kneel to offer it a place as one of the greatest fighting games of all time. A game which has gone through so many trials and tribulations. A game many feared would never see general release ever again. Yes, I'm talking about Marvel vs. Capcom 2. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the history of what came before that led to its release, discuss the game itself and its massive roster, how it did upon its release and its legacy, and why the game disappeared, and for the love of just one man to bring us the hope we need, and finally to the present day where it was finally freed. My name is Danny from Retro Wars, where each month I attempt to bring a retrospective out about the games we used to play growing up. Retro Wars is also a podcast where each week me and a friend talk about the video games we used to play back when we were kids, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you want to hear more, I'll be releasing the podcast episode of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on Tuesday. But before we talk all things Marvel vs. Capcom 2, we had to go back where the series began. I'll try not to go overboard with this section, but I believe it's important to give you, the viewer, an understanding of how we got to this point. See, back in the 90s, the arcade scene was booming, thanks in part to the success of Capcom's Street Fighter 2. As the industry grew, so did the technology and the genre itself. Capcom were the kings of the arcade, having the juggernaut that was Street Fighter behind them. But as anyone in business knows, you need to keep pushing forward and continuing to grow. Now, one business that was doing poorly at the time was Marvel, who was struggling and on the verge of going out of business. In a need for cash, Marvel signed the deal with Capcom for the right to their characters to be made into video games. The idea of this seems crazy now, considering how successful Marvel is after the money made from the monster that is the MCU, but this was a different time. Upon acquiring the Marvel licenses, the first game Capcom published was actually the Punisher arcade game. Oh, that's why it's in the collection. Fair enough. Although their next game, XMen Mutant Apocalypse, isn't. Put that in there, you cowards, that's a great game. Capcom then looked to make what they do best, fighting games, and they were tasked to create 2 games. An X-Men game with all the mutants we love, and another fighting game with the remaining heroes like Spider-Man and Captain America. Being an X-Men fan at the time was actually great. The Jim Lee series was doing really well and had positively reworked the mutant group. Konami had also released a successful beat-em-up in the arcades. 6 players could play at once. 6 players? Additionally, well, come on, what else was out at the time and kicking ass? Oh my god, that is my childhood. That song is just, oh god, chef's kiss. In 1994, Capcom released X-Men Children of the Atom for the arcades. Unlike Capcom's baby Street Fighter 2, X-Men Children of the Atom was developed to be far more over the top than its predecessor to reflect the crazy ability of the mutant X-Men. This would mean characters would be able to launch or launch their opponent high up into the screen. Opponents could be hit with long and crazy combos, and projectiles were big and flashy. After all, we're not dealing with the limitations humans could do, although Dalshian could argue this. We're working with mutants, whose powers could be seen akin to a god. The player had a choice of 10 characters to pick from, and get ready because we're going through each one, and in the other games as well. But I should add, to highlight these characters, I'm going to be using the artwork from Marvel vs. Capcom 2 because it is gorgeous. Colossus, my favourite member of the X-Men, the lovable metal man from Russia. Growing up, Colossus was always my favourite, and he still remains so. Cyclops, the leader of the X-Men, whose optic blast can blow everyone's head off in just a split second. Iceman, one of the most powerful mutants in the comic book land, although to be honest he'd be very handy to have around with my beers. Omega Red, born in Soviet Russia, he was experimented on by the KGB in an attempt to make a Captain America, and this was their result. Ugh. Psylocke is, hot. Shit, she's a psychic user from England. Is she? Oh, I never knew that. She can also make weapons from her mind and fire psychic blasts. Sentinel. A big-ass robot built to find and annihilate mutants. They never really seem to do their job, until the X-Men film Days of Future Past, where they were bloody brutal. Silver Samurai. He can create a tachyon field, allowing him to cut anything. And he dresses like a samurai. Silver. Spiral. Having multiple arms, she is skilled in magic, and having multiple arms means she's very handy at fighting, and probably doing patty cake, baker's man. Is that how the song goes? Either way, she'd be good at it. Storm. One of the X-Men's main figures. She can control the weather and is considered one of the most powerful mutants in the universe, and is also the wife of Black Panther. Wolverine. Do we need to say any more? One of media's greatest and most popular characters. He's gruff, doesn't work well with others, has a healing factor, and claws which you wouldn't want near your pecker. Now, Magneto and Juggernaut were in the game as non-playable characters. Magneto is one of the X-Men's most dangerous enemies. He can mold metal to his will, and in reality would probably destroy the whole MCU in a second. The Juggernaut is actually a regular human, who is empowered by a gem, becoming a literal human Juggernaut. He possesses superhuman strength and durability, and is virtually immune to psychic attacks because of his helmet. Eagle-eyed players will recognise the game uses the voice actors from the cartoon show. That's very smart. Although, to be honest, we only want Wolverine.
Tell Cyclops I made him a convertible.
There's still one more character that should be discussed. He was one of the first guest characters in a fighting game. Yes, I know he's not the first before people start shouting, but his presence added the extra star power this game needed. And that was Akuma, the Street Fighter 2 badass, the killer of M. Bison. Akuma appears as a secret character, but at this point, Street Fighter Alpha wasn't really a thing, so the game used his Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Sprite, so it does look a bit jarring. To get him, you just use a bit of a code, and the code works. Can't remember it, but I used it online. Just read it online, it's there, it works. Leave it as that. It's like you go left, right sort of thing, like a Sonic 8 cheat. Leave it 3 seconds, press heavy punch, heavy kick, and light punch, I think. Something like, just Google it, you'll find the right answer. Either way, it does work. Now, you know I mentioned there was going to be a second game? Yeah, that came in 1995 and was called Marvel Superheroes. The game was loosely based on the Infinity Gauntlet storyline in the comics. Yes, the comics, not the MCU. See, this came from the comic books, not the films. A unique mechanic in this game are the Infinity Gems: power, time, space, reality, soul, and mind. These gems can be earned by obtaining them from opponents during arcade mode, or by fulfilling certain criteria during versus mode, such as getting the first hit. By using these gems in battle, fighters receive enhanced effects for a short amount of time, such as increased power or defense, health recovery, or additional attacks. Certain fighters will receive extra benefits while using these gems. For example, if Spider-Man uses the power gem, he can create a doppelganger on the opposite side of the opponent's screen for extra damage during his attacks. You may as well just call it a clone and be done with it. Come on. Now, characters in this game came from the rest of the Marvel Universe, but there were 4 X-Men characters who were voted in as being the most popular, and these were Magneto, Juggernaut, Psylocke, thank God, and of course, Wolverine. Anita from the Darkstalkers series. She can use telekinesis and was a secret playable character. She was actually one of the only characters who never features as a playable character again after this game. Blackheart, the son of Mephisto, and he's the Prince of Hell. Okay, didn't know who he was. He's a foe of Ghost Rider's apparently. Hang on, where the hell is Ghost Rider then? Captain America, Mr. Boy Scout himself. Good old Cap is the embodiment of America. The super soldier with a vibranium shield who can do this all day. Poor Penny. Doctor Doom, one of the big bads of the Marvel Universe. He's a genius and incredibly ruthless, often butting heads with the Fantastic Four, but soon going to be going up against the Avengers. Hulk, everyone's favourite green monster. Created after being exposed to a huge amount of gamma radiation, the Hulk uses his anger to fuel his incredible strength, which we all know is probably because he stepped on some Lego, but in reality the big guy's a big softie. Iron Man, Marvel's billionaire playboy. Tony Stark created the Iron Man armor after being captured and wounded in a war zone. The armor makes him a walking tank, and his position regularly puts him at the center of all things Marvel. Shuma Garath. Who? Who the Who's this? Oh, hang on, did anyone see the last Doctor Strange film? Yeah, that thing. Spider-Man, my boy. Spider-Man is Marvel. One of the most popular comic book characters of all time. His morals are strong and his jokes are quick. Just don't ask him about clones. Thanos. This game's big bad. He wanted to gather the Infinity Stones to cause havoc and impress Lady Death. Although she's probably more interested in Deadpool, yeah, don't ask, it's weird. I'm now complete because I can use Spider-Man and my brother could use Wolverine. It's like having Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter. Like the previous game, Marvel Superheroes was received positively, and I'm not going to keep repeating the reception from each game because they're always great. However, Capcom was not done, and because, like Mr. Krabs, they like money, they began, really the Dark Ages began. It was a dark period for arcades and fighting games in general. Capcom went to work on way too many projects, and it led to them actually releasing too many games in too short a period, which suffocated the market. They did it to themselves. The suffocation began with the first crossover game in the series, XMen vs Street Fighter in 1996. Now, XMen vs Street Fighter was a big deal, as we saw characters from the Street Fighter universe clash with the X-Men. We all knew it could work because we saw Akuma appear in Children of the Atom. So how would it look if we added Ryu and all the other characters? X-Men vs Street Fighter used the aesthetics from X-Men Children of the Atom, as well as the sprites from Street Fighter Alpha 2. However, the big difference is that the Street Fighter characters had their abilities pumped up a little bit so they can compete with their mutant rivals. For example, when Ryu uses a super move, it turns into a Super Hadouken, which you may as well call a Kamehameha wave. X-Men vs Street Fighter incorporates dual character selection with tag team based combat. The player chooses two characters to beat the opposing team. During a match, a player can switch in and out with their partner anytime. Whilst one character is on the screen, the other is resting and acquires some of their health back. Now, normally the standard fighting game trope is that matches are fought over 3 rounds, but instead now you only have 1 round. The match ends when both the player's characters have been defeated. 17 fighters were available this time round, and again, instead of going through every character, because we'll be here all day, I'll just go through any new characters. Now on the X-Men side, we have Gambit. Oh, there's definitely a lot of love for Gambit recently. The Cajun love guru, René Lebeau. He's so ready, he shot out of his daddy's dick ready. What a line that was in the film. Rogue, Gambit's sugar. Unable to touch others, Rogue can absorb the powers of others. She accidentally absorbed too much of Miss Marvel, making her another Miss Marvel. Sabretooth, the rival of Wolverine. If you thought Wolverine was vicious, you've not seen anything. Sabretooth could be considered nothing more than just feral. On the side of Team Street Fighter, we have Cammy, ex-British Special Forces. She was captured by Shadaloo and brainwashed to serve their bidding until finally breaking free of Bison's grasp. Charlie Nash, the man who never dies. Even when you think he's dead, he'll just keep coming back. Gal wasn't around in Street Fighter Alpha, so yeah, just throw Charlie in. Chun-Li, the lady of Street Fighter. The lady with the thighs of doom, with the ability to kick the crap out of anyone. Yeah, she does, she has the ultimate thighs, and go watch the movie. Dalcium. I swear this guy belongs in X-Men. He can stretch his limbs, but it's not confirmed if he can stretch his willy in the same way. Ken Masters, Ryu's friend and rival. He is the master of basically setting people on fire with his fist. He's a rich playboy and, well, what more can you say? I want his lifestyle. M. Bison, the leader of Shadaloo. Yes, he's back after being killed in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but don't worry, he's got a brand new look where he's put on a few pounds. And Bison, though, regardless of that extra weight, is still an absolute killer. Zangief, our favourite Russian wrestler. He has hair where there shouldn't be hair. Like, seriously, how is the hair on those shins? Be otherwise, don't go near him because he will grab you and throw you and crush you to oblivion. Ryu, Street Fighter's protagonist, and my main, well, for a while until another character came along. He's always looking for a fight, always looking for someone to beat, and always looking to increase his skills. And after the release of X-Men vs Street Fighter, Capcom were not done, and they thought, well, if this worked, let's just do the same with the Marvel characters. And a year later, Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter was released in 1997. I will say to begin with, the artwork for this game is fire. Like, seriously, I am in love with this picture. Seeing Sakura and Chun-Li together was amazing. The gameplay was similar to X-Men vs Street Fighter, but this time it added the partner assist, where the player can have their partner jump in to assist or potentially break up a combo. This added a new layer of strategy to the series and has remained a staple going forward. Similar to Marvel superheroes, Marvel vs Street Fighter says goodbye to the X-Men characters and welcome back to the Marvel characters. New entrants from the Marvel side included: there was a secret character of Armored Spider-Man, which was based on the armored suit introduced in Web of Spider-Man issue 100. I actually have that comic, I do. So his jump height is a little bit lower than normal Spider-Man's, and the good thing is with that is he's able to do certain combos that Spider-Man can't do, and infinites. Yeah, this game has infinites, don't even start. Mephisto? Well, he's the ruler of the extra-dimensional hell and father of Blackheart. He's a straight palette swap of Blackheart. US Agent, real name John Walker, is a palette swap of Captain America, with no differences from Mr. Red, White and Blue. For Street Fighter, we have Danabiki, Dan, Street Fighter's joke character. But let's be honest, he's managed to get a cult following for how crap and funny he is. Imagine Ryu, but dreadful. Sakura. Oh, my girl Sakura. She is my favourite gaming character of all time. She kicks ass, as she wishes to emulate her hero Ryu. However, unlike Ryu, she's more of a rush character, and way more fun to play as. As for other characters, we had Shadow, who's a palette swap of Charlie, and it's assumed he has been transformed by Bison after being kidnapped. Now, Mech Zangief is a robotic prototype of Zangief that was developed by M. Bison whilst he was in the Marvel Universe, and he stole some of the technology from Apocalypse. Mech Zangief can't block, but he can't be stunned either. He is simply all-out attack. He's kind of a broken character. Dark Sakura was introduced in this game, where you use all three of your super, you turn Sakura into a sunburnt version of herself. Yes, she's sunburnt. But because she gets sunburnt, she gains the abilities similar to the use of the Satsunui no Hado, except she doesn't lose her humanity. That is not a good message. Just because you get sunburnt does not mean you gain godlike abilities. Sunburns are bad for you kids. Please make sure you put sunscreen on. For the love of God, I don't know how it works, but apparently in Capcom land it does. And finally, there was Honomaru. He's an original guest character created by Capcom in cooperation with the Japanese comedian Noritake Kenishi. I probably butchered that. After all this, it was time for Capcom to get serious, as they really understood there was money to be made. In 1998, Capcom released Marvel vs. Capcom Clash the Superheroes, and I'll say this right now, the artwork for this game was straight fire. Look at that. Capcom brought back characters from their previous games, along with adding a lot more characters from other franchises. From the Marvel side, we had Venom, the alien symbiote who once bonded with Spider-Man, evolving his abilities before bonding with Eddie Brock. Venom is one of Marvel's best anti-heroes.
We are Venom.
High-speed Venom, a secret character, and he's much faster than the regular Venom, although he is much weaker and can take less punishment than any other character, receiving roughly twice the amount of damage per hit. However, he is possibly the fastest character in the Marvel vs. Capcom series as a whole. War Machine, Cody Rhodes, Iron Man's best friend and probably the only person who could put up with him. As War Machine, Cody is simply put, the big boy gun version of Iron Man. Gold War Machine. Now Gold War Machine, again, is a secret character. He cannot block, loses a couple moves, but he also can't jump as high as regular War Machine. But he's just powerful. He's got so many powerful moves and has hyper armor, which allows him to just walk through most attacks without getting hit stunned or dizzied, and has greatly increased power and defense at the cost of that speed. Then there's Orange Hulk, again another secret character. Similar to Venom, he's faster, takes more damage, and hits a little bit less. Now on the Capcom side, there were quite a few here. We had Captain Commando, the leader of the Commando team, coming from the game self-titled Captain Commando. Well, I need to play that game for the podcast. Jin Sayotone, he's the main protagonist from the 2D mecha robot fighting game Cyberbots Full Metal Madness. His design is awesome, but you can't tell me Capcom didn't steal his design from Domon Kashu from G Gundam. Yes, I know my Gundam, shut up. Mega Man, Capcom's baby. Good old Mega Man is one of Capcom's best IPs. Created by Dr. Light as a lab assistant, he had to be modified into Mega Man to defend the world from Dr. Wily's robot masters. Morrigan. Now, Morrigan is a succubus who was born in 1678 in a Scottish region and is one of the main characters from the Darkstalkers series. Yeah, although she's a succubus, she actually doesn't take men's souls. She secretes a liquid when she does stuff and gets excited. No, God no, that just sounds horrendous. Then there's a secret palette swap. That's Lilith. She's a part of Morrigan that was separated to stop Morrigan becoming too powerful. Now, she is just a straight palette swap here, but if you play Darkstalkers, she's got her own design. Role. She's a warm-hearted robot designed for housekeeping and is a younger sister of Mega Man. Now, unlike most of the palette swaps, she has a slight difference to Mega Man as she's a little bit slower, but also has a smaller hitbox. Shadow Lady. She is a roboticized and cyberly enhanced version of Chun-Li with high-tech abilities empowered with Shadowloo technology. Shadow Lady plays almost entirely different from Chun-Li. Whilst there are some comparisons, Shadow Lady possesses a number of her own moves and displays her robotic nature, such as large drills instead of hands, and missiles that can be launched off her body. That's just freaky. Strider Hiryu, the main protagonist of the Strider franchise. Now, I'm not gonna lie, when I saw his design, I thought, that's not Strider. That's not the Strider I grew up with. This Strider looks like an absolute badass. Like, when I grew up, this was the box art for the version I got and was stuck in my brain. I want to vomit looking at that, it's disgusting! Similar to the past games, there were tag mechanics, but this time the game features 20 special partner characters that came from the Marvel and Capcom universes, which can be called forth during battle for support. Although annoyingly, this is completely random. Although it should be also said, one of those was Thor, and this was his only appearance. It's only going to be his only appearance in this video, it just seems odd. The special partner mechanic removed the variable assist option the previous game had introduced. Clash of Superheroes also introduced a new technique called the variable cross, also known as a duo team attack. When executing a variable cross, the player can attack their opponent with both characters simultaneously for a limited time. Capcom then decided to slow down for a second and not release a game every 5 minutes, and they waited a whole 2 years until the next, and for a long time we genuinely thought this was going to be the final installment of the franchise. In February 2000, Capcom unveiled the piece de resistance of the Versus collection to arcades.
Capcom presents
Ready?
Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes.
Okay, it wasn't that good. It was just pretty poo and boring. But let's be honest, everyone who just watched that now had the same reaction as Randy. I see it and immediately get excited and desperately look for a controller. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes was developed for the Sega Naomi arcade board and the Dreamcast, being Capcom's first attempt at a fighting game outside the CP System 2 and 3 hardware systems. The game was also the first in the Marvel vs. Capcom series to combine hand-drawn two-dimensional sprites upon three-dimensional backgrounds. These 3D backgrounds could be seen as a reason for why it was so hard to emulate the game. Now, although I never really thought about it or even knew, there's actually a plot for this game. Yeah, I know. Well, the majority of us didn't know because it was locked away in the Japanese manual. So, gather round as I tell you a tale. 2 years after the battle against Onslaught, peace in planet Earth was restored until a mysterious entity named Abyss shrouded the atmosphere with his dark energy. It was consumed within a sphere that the being was holding close to him. With his immense strength, it blew past a desert, and the plant life was also ruined. A pirate known as Ruby Heart discovered the energy and warned the heroes and villains from the two camps who were fighting amongst themselves. Together they must stop this new nemesis before the Earth and the universe is destroyed by Abyss's terrible power. In the end of the battle, the heroes and the villains make a truce while taking a joy cruise on Ruby Heart's ship flying through the skies of Earth. She holds the orb in her hand, then casts it into the sea, thus seeing the last of Abyss and closing the rivalry between Marvel and Capcom. It's a pretty shit plot, to be honest. There were two names there you've probably not heard of before, Abyss and Ruby Rose, and we'll get to them shortly, although if you don't know your comics, you probably don't know who Onslaught is either. The game from this roster was huge, with nearly everyone back who was featured in any of the Versus games, aside from Horomaru and Anita returning back from the fray. Even with these returning characters, there was still a lot of space for newbies, and these being, from Marvel, Cable, the son of Jean Grey and Cyclops for the future. He comes with a big-ass gun and a big-ass attitude. Marrow, a mutant who can grow bones and make them stick out and use as projectiles. Ugh. Wolverine, with bone claws. Yeah, it's what it says on the tin. But why bone claws though? Well, for those who don't know, Wolverine's claws are naturally bone. They just got a metal coating over them. Was it needed? Probably not. But now we can have 2 Wolverines on our team. And from Capcom, Amingo, the first character created simply for this game, where stereotyping was a thing. Yeah. He's a member of a race of man-plants, and is on a journey to find the source of death on all plant life on Earth. It's often rumoured Amingo is originally a character for a planned but finally cancelled game from Capcom, but this is never officially confirmed, so it's unknown what type of game he was meant to be with. Anakaris, well, what's a good series to keep going back to? Darkstalkers, of course. The first character brought back on was Anakaris, I think that's how you pronounce it, because, well, why not insert a mummy into the mix? Baby Bonnie Hood, also known as BB Hood, is a special S-Class Dark Hunter who first appears in the Darkstalkers series. She looks cute, but this is a lie because she'll blow your brains out. Felicia, another character from Darkstalkers. I wonder why Felicia, a cat lady with little to no clothing, is here. I wonder why she's so popular. Absolutely no idea. Guile, Mr. Kick-Ass Theme himself. But now he's in Alpha 3, we can use that sprite. So here he is, once again trying to save Charlie, and he'll probably fail. Hayato Kanazaki, the main character of the Star Gladiator series by Capcom. Jill Valentine, the heroine from the Resident Evil series. One of the most popular female characters in gaming, and boy is she kicking the arse and bringing the zombies with her. Ruby Heart, an original character for this game and considered the main character. Ruby Heart is a French-speaking pirate with a prominent reputation across all the 7 seas. Now I love her design, and I'd love to genuinely see her in another game. Servbot from Mega Man Legends. I didn't know who this little guy was until I actually played Mega Man Legends, but then I knew Capcom were trying to push it as a mascot. I won't lie though, he's a pain in the arse to hit. Stupid hitbox. Sonson, another new character created by Capcom for this game. Sonson is a little monkey girl and the granddaughter of the original Sonson. Now, Sonson is in a game called Sonson, back in the arcades, and both characters are based on the main character of Journey to the West. Tronbon, the boss of the Surfbots, one of the villains from the Mega Man Legends. Now, I straight love Tronbon. She did get her own game in the future, but I really want to see more of her because she was brilliant in Mega Man Legends. Additionally, there was one unplayable character, the antagonist Abyss. Abyss was the final boss for the arcade ladder, and the player would have to defeat all 3 forms to end the adventure, and he was created specifically for this game. I won't lie though, Abyss sucks. He does. Like, give me a big Marvel bad to kick in the nuts. Like, Abyss is rubbish. With this many characters, it presented a huge increase from its predecessors, with its grand total of 56 characters. At the time, I hadn't seen anything like it at all. None of the games had their roster this huge, or let's be honest, 56 characters can seem small when you compare it to Dragon Ball Z, or a Naruto game, or Tobal 2. Yeah, just don't with Tobal 2, that's nuts. The roster itself was iconic, and even the character selection screen sticks in players' minds. Heck, I'm wearing a t-shirt of it right now. There are not many player select screens that stick in my mind, and I can just draw it straight away, probably without the exception being Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2. Another reason the roster is so loved is simply because the characters are on show. The majority, and I say majority, are legendary characters. To have everyone back from the previous games just made sense. You have the sprites, so use them. Additionally, having many new characters, especially from the Capcom side, gave the roster even more variation. Now, of all the new characters, I believe that Jill Valentine's representation is incredible, and it just made me want to play Resident Evil immediately. Now, along with that huge roster, it also made a huge change to the gameplay, with the amount of selectable characters in the team going from 2 to 3. This alone is a huge change in the gameplay when you think you have 56 characters to play with. The combinations are endless. Plus it makes me happy because I can just pick Spider-Man, Ryu and Sakura. Yeah, shut up, I'm a basic bitch. Having 3 players instead of 2 allows for more strategy, and in Marvel vs Capcom 2's case, just more chaos. Like XMen vs Street Fighter, you can switch with either one of your 2 characters any time, allowing the other to recover. The match ends once all 3 members have been knocked out, so it could mean you have a 3-on-1 situation, which, well, can create legends. Also, like the first MVC game, the player could call upon their special support by tapping a button, but this has been expanded upon. Rather than having one support ability, the player chooses one of 3 before a battle, which are character dependent. However, whilst you call in your supports for help, there's a risk. If they get caught by an opponent, they're vulnerable to attack or even knocked out, which could be a nightmare. Now, one huge difference to the gameplay to accommodate all this switching and support malarkey is changing the 3-punch kick attack strength mechanic to resemble an SNK format, going down to a 2-punch kick attack strength mechanic. The developers said one reason for this was to lower the difficulty and the complexity for new players so they could easily jump in and join the fun. It should always be remembered, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is not the same technical level as a Tekken or a Street Fighter, nor are the goals the same, as I believe straight fun is what players come for rather than the glory. An aggressive mechanic is brought in though called the snapback, where you can use one of your super meter to forcibly pull one of your opponents in. Kinda like you hit them so hard, they fly out and another one has to jump in. This is something which Dragon Ball FighterZ uses in their game. But let's talk about fun things the game is known for. Yes, the supports and switching is fun, but so are the air combos. They focus on the characters using super jumps and chaining combos whilst the opponent is mid-air, and once it's started it makes the player look like a mini god. But the best part of the game are the hyper combos. These are super damaging moves that use as a super meter, and can be used for a high damage combo ender or even a combo extender. Most supers use 1 life bar, but some have access to a level 3 hyper combo which uses all 3 stocks of a player's meter. These hyper combos are big, they're flashy, and they're so over the top, they signify everything this game wants to achieve. As earlier discussed, the Capcom side needed to have their moves pumped up a little so they can match their Marvel counterparts. With a bit of practice, the player can use their team hyper combo, where a character's remaining team members jump into the screen and they all use their hypers at once. Seeing all 3 characters come on at once, firing beams in every direction, is a sight to behold, and potentially triggering another Pokemon Porygon event. YouTube that at your own risk, I ain't getting sued. Regardless, finishing any match with a team hyper combo just looks so good, and really is the embodiment of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Now, let's talk about the music. Nothing in the previous titles for me ever stood out as bangers, but maybe with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 being so epic, it obviously deserved a soundtrack that was just as good. No, it didn't. For some reason, the developers decided jazz goes together with fighting games. Seriously, how did this conversation go down during the Q&A session? Techno? Hip-hop? Gospel? Actually, that would be pretty epic if they went with gospel, but no, they went with jazz. The Marvel vs. 2 soundtrack was and continues to be met with disdain. Now I know what you're all thinking, what about that track? Well, let's talk about that track, shall we? When you go to the character select screen, you're met with this song.
I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, that song is admittedly very catchy, and I can understand why everyone likes it. But there's a glaring problem with it. The song only lasts less than 10 seconds? Before it starts repeating again. Now, this works quite well as a character selection screen because you're just picking your characters quite quickly and into the fray you go. But play this song for more than a minute and that little jig that had you in your step will start to fade, and quickly insanity will start to grow. There are tales that the CIA used this exact song for questioning terrorists. Put them in a room and leave this playing for 5 minutes and you'll save countless lives. You can fact check that. Joking aside, I do want to really praise the artwork for this game. I mentioned earlier the promotional art for Marvel vs. Street Fighter game was awesome, but the box art for the Dreamcast versions of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 are mwah! Additionally, as I've already shown, the additional character art for each character is nothing short of perfect. Ones that I like the most are Sakura, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and of course Psylocke. If I was allowed to, I would have all the character arts lined up the corridor as you come into my house, but sadly my wife won't let me have this, and it's possibly another reason I get divorced. Now let's talk about the ports of the game. The first home console port came out very quickly for the now dead Sega Dreamcast, RIP, and is considered one of the best ports of the game, aside from the arcade. It took 2 years for MVC2 to be released for the PS2 and the Xbox. Now for me growing up, I regularly played the PS2 version. I didn't know that they weren't very good ports, that was just all I had. Thankfully, the next versions on the PS3 and Xbox 360 in 2009 were much better. The The final release until the Dark Ages was the iOS version, which was released in 2012. Now, upon release of the game in the arcade, the game wasn't met with the hype the other versions had. Some complained that they used a lot of the same sprites, which was true. Other arguments was that the game had been dumbed down because it had 2 attack buttons, and the music was dreadful, and the game wasn't very balanced. The PS2 and Xbox versions were criticised for being nowhere as good as the Dreamcast, and additionally all 3 versions were criticised for lacking online support outside Japan. However, as time went on, MVC2 became a sleeper hit, with fans looking past the initial faults and realising the game was just fun and far better than the previous titles. Even the soundtrack, okay, the odd track became fan favourites. MVC2 started gaining more traction and beginning to appear on more best-ofs, such as Best Dreamcast Game or Best Fighting Games, and it continues to be mentioned even today. When the game was re-released once more for the PS3 and the Xbox 360, they did have online support, which was needed, and critics once again started heaping praise on the game. Now, as we all know, this wasn't the end of the Marvel vs. Capcom series, as in 2011, Capcom released the much anticipated Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which drastically changed the art style of the previous games. The game was reviewed well, and like that game before, it was loved by fans. Now, I'm not going into Marvel vs. Capcom 3, as that could be a video in itself in the future. I will just leave this section of the video by briefly discussing the final game in the series, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. This game brought it back to a 2-on-2 fighter and had a heavily influence from the bigwigs at Disney, as the X-Men were gone and a lot of the MCU characters were in their place. The game flopped and sadly signalled the end for the running success of the Marvel vs. Capcom games. Goddamn mouse. One element that has always been talked about is the lack of balance this game has. Now, as Thanos would tell you, balance is vital. If you don't have balance in fighting games, it means that certain characters become overpowered and others will never get used. This then leads to the same characters being used and the game becoming stale, and then eventually dying. And Marvel vs. Capcom 2 does have a problem of balance. There are only about 10 characters, which can be seen as competitively viable, and those that seriously play the game know this. The thing is, no one cares. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is not there to be seen as a serious fighting game. Well, that's my opinion. If you want a serious and better fighting game, then your eyes should be drawn to Capcom vs SNK 2, or in my opinion, the best 2D fighter ever, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. But if you just want fun and to always have a smile on your face, then go play Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Every time I play it, win or lose, I always have fun, and the characters on offer provide the craziness that comes with it. It just can't be beaten. MVC2 is not just a hit with fans, but it's also been huge in the competitive scene. Now, for those who don't know, the holy mecca of fighting games is EVO, and it's my dream to attend there one day. The top fighting games make the main stage, and MVC2 was present from 2002 to 2010, until it was replaced by its sequel, Marvel vs. Capcom 3. It may seem an odd choice for the stage, that why would you want an unbalanced game like MVC2, which only has about 10 viable characters? But going back to my earlier point, it's fun, and that's why the fans love watching it. During that time, one man dominated the scene, being in 8 of the 9 finals and becoming the champion 6 times. If you know your fighting games, he needs no introduction. And for those who don't know, here's the footage of what is considered the greatest round of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 ever. His name, if you didn't hear it, is Justin Wong, a legend in the community, and was receiving end of the most infamous EVO moments, which I'm not going to put up on here, you can Google that one yourself. And the reason I'm not doing this is because Justin's a friend of the show, and he appeared on the podcast and me and him caught up and spoke about Street Fighter 3. With the introduction of Marvel vs. Capcom Collection now in the world, it would be really interesting to see if Marvel vs. Capcom 2 will make it to EVO once more. Or is that position going to be stolen by the soon-to-be-released Capcom vs SNK 2? However, even though Marvel vs. Capcom 2 did do really well at the competitive scene, it meant nothing, as MVC2 is about to enter the dark era, a very dark era. On December the 15th, 2013, Capcom announced that Marvel vs. Capcom 2 will be removed from the Xbox Live Arcade and the PlayStation Network stores towards the end of the month, following the end of Capcom's licensing contracts with Marvel Comics. And by December 26, the game was gone from those stores. Shortly after, the iOS was also delisted from the Apple Store. This now meant there was no legal way to purchase the game. You could buy the game secondhand if you wanted, but the copies were going up in value quicker than Gordon Ramsay's blood pressure during a service at Hell's Kitchen. You could emulate it, but no, naughty, and I cannot promote that. The other method is playing on the online platform Fightcade 2, where you can play others across the internet and then tell them in the chat room how much better you are at them. However, the first rule you need to know about Fightcade is...
You do not talk about...
Fightcade.
The second rule of...
Fightcade.
...is... You do not talk about...
Fightcade. Nearly 8 years later, an emotional video from my YouTubing idol Maximilian Dude begged for Marvel vs. Capcom 2 to be released in some capacity and began the hashtag FreeMVC2. This began to trend on Twitter, with his plea resonating with fans of the game and a petition being created which generated over 10,000 signatures in seconds. The movement became so popular, signs were being seen during AEW tapings, and even Hollywood actor Michael B. Jordan wished for it to happen, when he really should have been focusing on the PS5. No wonder his Instagram post got deleted. Fans did have some hope in August 2022, when Arcade 1UP revealed a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 cabinet. As well as including all the Marvel crossover games, it included Wi-Fi connectivity for online play. Sounds great! However, it cost a small fortune, and not everyone has the space for an arcade cabinet. With this option being well out of range for the majority of us, we had to wait. And then in June 2024, during a Nintendo Direct, well, I'll let Max explain what happened.
Was there farming? I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't believe there was tool and ground farming.
Take you for a ride. What the f? 7 arcade games featuring Marvel and Capcom characters are fighting their way onto Nintendo Switch as one collection. What? Flash in XMen vs. Street Fighter.
Ah, what's up?
Duke it out in Marvel vs. Capcom 2: New Age of
What am I
Heroes.
fucking looking at?
Take down the Kingpin in the beat-em-up side-scroller The Punisher, and more.
Yes, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was finally free after 11 years, and I won't lie, I had a similar reaction. Except I watched it at 6 in the morning and had to scream silently like I stood on my child's Lego in the middle of the night. Max then released a short video which summed up everyone's mood.
Art, I don't want to alarm you, but
Capcom presents.
This was really surprising because the game was multi-platform and will appear on the PS4, Nintendo Switch and Steam. But at the time, Xbox fans, well, they weren't allowed to join in the party because it wasn't going to be appearing. But Capcom and Microsoft sorted things out, so the game will be appearing on Xbox. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the Marvel vs. Capcom collection includes all the games we talked about, including The Punisher. But let's be honest, we're all here for MVC2. Well, I think we are all here for MVC2. As for which version we're getting, it's the arcade one. But I think it's been altered as a training mode with hitboxes as well as online play has been added. Talking about the online play, all the games feature rollback netcode, and for a fighting game that's absolutely essential, and taking any fighting game from a 6 to a 10 in an absolute heartbeat. Although as fans we can rejoice for MVC2 is finally free. Now the physical release is not out until November. It's going to be interesting to see the sales records for the online and physical editions. I can imagine there'll be a larger amount of physical editions, so no matter what happens again, the higher ups can't ever take it from us. However, there is one other element we need to think about. If we are getting this huge collection for all these games, could we see a Marvel vs. Capcom 4? No, you are not Marvel vs. Capcom 4, go away. Well, to answer that, possibly, but it all depends on how this collection sells. As fans, we can create as many hashtags as possible, but business is business, and the most important currency is the almighty dollar. Capcom clearly is testing the waters with all their old games to see how popular they are, as they're releasing a lot of collections. Don't believe me? Well, they just recently dropped another trailer again on Nintendo Direct for a collection we once again never thought possible. Once again, here is Max.
This is going to be a match to remember.
What?
8 Capcom fighting games are brawling their way onto Nintendo Switch in one collection.
The fuck?
Here's
What
the
the fuck?
complete roster of
Hold up!
games. Capcom vs. SNK
Ah!
Millennium Fight
What's
2004.
happening?
Capcom vs.
What?
SNK 2
What?
Mark of the Millennium
What the fuck?
2001.
Hold up!
Project Justice.
What? What? What?
Fighting
No,
Evolution.
get rid of it. Delete it. Put something else in.
Alpha 3 Upper.
No way.
Plasma Sword.
Oh my
Megalo
God.
Power Stone.
Ah!
And Power Stone 2.
This time the game in focus here was Capcom vs SNK 2, another fan favourite which I've already talked about. CVS 2 was considered lost in the nightmare that is licensing. But now with both collections soon to be out in the wild, could we see a Capcom vs SNK 3 and a Marvel vs Capcom 4? If we did get a Marvel vs Capcom 4, I would love for it to go back to the 2D art style. Games like Guilty Gear and Dragon Ball FighterZ have shown that the 2D anime art style works. But alas, I am wishing for things that might never happen, and we should focus about the now. Today is just a glorious day for Marvel vs Capcom 2 fans and for fighting games in general. A game we never thought would be released again. A game I genuinely thought I would never own legally. Oh, unless I went down the second-hand route or bought an arcade machine. I am just so excited to be able to play this game once more on a home console, and to play those from the community across the internet. It shows that the excitement for games like this still holds the love from fans, and is another reason why all video games should be available for fans to have some sort of access to. I really do thank all those behind the scenes who have made this possible, to make that little dream of mine come true, and I'm so excited to play this once more, and maybe introduce my daughter to the world of Marvel vs Capcom 2. And that's it. That's my retrospective of Marvel vs Capcom 2. If you've reached the end of this video, I thank you so much. And as I said at the beginning of this video, please leave a like and a comment, along with hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell for more content. If you do wish for another view of the game, the podcast of this version of the episode is being released today as well. Until then, my name is Danny. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.